Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, how's life? I hope you are all in a good condition. Today, we are going to present our material about exploring experiential meaning, participants, process, and circumstance. But before presenting our material today, let me introduce our group members, which members are: the first is Nurhalisa Widyaningrum, and the second is Feni Anggria Agustin, and the third is Isnati Nurhidayah, and the fourth is Aprisha Ika Handani, and the last one is Fazana Royhan Hilmi. And then the first speakers, time is yours. Okay, my name is Feni Anggria Agustin. Here I will explain the material about participant. Participant. A participant can be a person, a place, or an object. This is the notion of thingness. And in the grammar of a clause, the participant is most commonly realized by nominal group. In other words, we can have pre-modification before the thing and post-modification after it. And then pre-modification. Pre-modification can functionally be divided into several parts. You will notice that the four major groups reflect the pre-modified structure. The first, tactics. Tactics which point to or in some way select the noun functioning as thing. Tactics include a articles, for example, a, the. And the second is demonstrative, for example, this, that, this, those. And the third is possessive, for example, my, her, their, my father's. And the last one is a few non-specific pointers, for example, some, both, and all. And the second is numerative. Numerative which tell how many of the things there are or in what order they occur. Numerative includes a cardinal numbers, for example, 1, 3, 1,000. And the second is ordinal numbers, for example, first, second, third, and last. And the next is epithets. Epithets which describe a quality of a thing. Epithets include adjective, for example, young, red, dirty, exciting, disgusting, and wonderful. And the last one is classifiers. Classifiers which establish the thing as a member of a class. It may be a adjective, for example, Australian, financial, public, and B nouns acting as classifier, for example, cheddar tree and carpool. Example of sentence: a new classic goldfish on the table that we bought last week. And the next is post-modification. Post-modification functions to qualify the thing in more detail, and it is functionally labeled as qualifier. The following is an example of a nominal group containing qualifiers. The first, the house on the hill. The second, snow on Mount Kosciuszko. And the third, the car that come hurtling down the road. And the last one is the tall woman who parks her car outside number 16. Note, qualifiers are in bold type. Example of nominal groups: the as tactics, many as numerative, long as epithet, broadleaf as a classifier, weeds as a thing, in my garden as a qualifier. And the second is my as tactic, friendly as a epithet, talk as a thing. And the last one is that as tactic, dangerous as a epithet, Altin as a classifier, road as a thing, and last summer as a qualifiers. Thank you. And the second speaker's time is yours.
Alright, let me introduce myself. My name is Aprisha Ikahandani and my presence number is 26. Here I would like to explain the full lab material from my previous friend, which is about processes. Alright, here we have to know what processes is. Do you know what is processes? Yeah, you are truly right. Processes is realized in the grammar of English clause. Here, verbal groups model the experience of events in English, whatever is happening, acting, doing, so sensing, saying, or simply being. While as the head of a nominal group involves a noun or pronoun is the thingness in English, and the word at the head of the verbal group is the concept of event. This is a member of the word class verb and is known as the event in the verbal group structure. This event is the central verb and signifies the activity taking place. The next, in an English verbal group, the event may stand alone or be preceded by other words in the group. The following is an example of an event marked in bold. And the first example is the string broke. The string here show about the participant nominal group and broke here show about the event. And the second example is the cat has been sleeping. The cat show about the participant nominal group. Has been here show about the verbal group and sleeping here is the event. So the next example is my car was being towed. My car here show about the participant nominal group. So was being towed. Towed here show about the event. So the next example is the other team might have been slacking. The other team here also show about the participant nominal group and the slacking here show about the event. So the last example is the promises could have been being watched. The promises here show about the participant nominal group, so watch here is the event. Next, the elements that precede the event itself are a quite limited set of forms known as auxiliary verbs or auxiliaries. The aspect of the event expressed the first is the location in time or tense, and the example here is will it and did it. So, will it and did it here show about the time. And the second is the completeness or the continuousness of the event or aspect. And the example is has eaten and was eating. And the next is the speaker's judgment of the certainty of the event or modality. And the example is may eat and must have eaten. And here can be active or passive. And the example is was eaten by someone. Next is the first auxiliary in the verbal group is sometimes called the finite because its special role in the grammar of English. And the example here is your car was being towed at the time, wasn't it? On the other hand, the finite move position to make the differences between a question and a statement. For the first example is your car was being towed at the time. This shows about the statement. And the second example is was your car being towed at the time? This can be said to be a question because there is a question mark. And the last material in processes that the auxiliary verb and the main event are sometimes separated in the word patterning of the English clause. In each of the following examples, there is just one process realized by the verbal group. But in each case, there is no adverb functioning as circumstance intervening in the linear structure of the verbal group. And here the verbal group are in bold type. And the first example is I can clearly remember. The word can and remember here show about the verbal group. And the second example is they seem to have totally lost the plot. Seem to have and lost here show about the verbal group. And the last example is they must have been completely confused by your direction. Must have been and confused here show about the verbal group. While the function of auxiliary verb in general and the role of the finite in particular relate much more to the interpersonal aspect of grammar than to experiential.
Alright, so in here I would like to continue the explanation of my previous friend. My name is Natin Nur Hidayah with person number 6. In here I would like to explain to you about circumstances. So, circumstances are realized by adverbial groups, prepositional phrases, and even by nominal groups. We will look at the structure of each of these in turn. The first one is adverbial group. It has an internal structure that allows some pre-modification and post-modification as demonstrated in the following list. For example, quickly, fairly quickly, very quickly, ever so quickly that we couldn't catch him, as quickly as she could, or as quickly as possible. At the head of the adverbial group is an adverb. This may be pre-modified by some kind of intensifier or a word that modifies the meaning of the head adverb. Words like quite, so, very, to, all are among the common pre-modifiers of adverbial groups. Now let's continue to the example number 2. That is preposition phrases. The prepositional phrase has the structure preposition plus nominal group. The nominal group may be quite simple, for example, in the morning, on for preposition, and Wednesday from nominal group, and then at and home. Or it can contain embedding preposition in, like for the nominal group, in the house that had been their home for 20 years. And then in that fateful Wednesday which changed their life under the flag that fluttered briefly. And then the last one, in the breeze, and that seemed to them a symbol of their endeavor. Notice that inside the prepositional phrase in these examples, there are 4 other prepositional phrases, 3 of them within the one overarching prepositional phrase structure. For example, like for 20 years, in the breeze, to them, and of their endeavor. Alright, now let's move on to the last one. It is nominal groups. Finally, there are some group of words that function as circumstance but don't appear to fit the pattern of either adverbial group or prepositional phrase. For example, all week, 3 weeks ago, 6 months later, many times at different, sometime, recently, all the time home. Some of these look like and indeed are nominal group like all week, many times, and home. Others seem to be adverbial groups with pre-modification by a nominal group instead of by an intensifier, some kind like 3 weeks ago, sometime, and recently. But what is important here is to be able to recognize a circumstance element of a clause by its function. That's the role it is playing in conveying the meaning of the message. Compare, for the instance, the function of the word home in the following 2 messages. The first type, home is a cave in the hills, and then the other, the troops are coming home. In the first of these clauses, home is a nominal group functioning as a thing. but in the second, it is functioning as circumstance. So that's all of my explanation. Let's move on to my next friend.
Okay, my name is Faisal Royhan Ilmi, and now I will explain a structure within structure. Structure within structure. Pattern of meaning and English experiential function offer many examples of structure within structure. Each structure has its own function. In simple terms, there is a clause in a clause. Let's look at the following example. They stood under the flag that fluttered briefly in the breeze and that seemed to them a symbol of their endeavor. In the example, it has a participant plus process plus circumstance, where the circumstance is released by a prepositional phrase. Prepositional phrases have the structure. They stood under the flag that fluttered briefly in the breeze and that seemed to them a symbol of their endeavor. Under is a preposition, and flag that fluttered briefly in the breeze and that seemed to them a symbol of their endeavor is a nominal group. This nominal group has two embedded clauses and function as equal status qualifier of the thing. In each embedded clause, there is a prepositional phrase that functions as a state, and the inside of it, there is a prepositional phrase function as a circumstance and the clause structure. But keep in mind that if there is a prepositional phrase that functions as a circumstance, for example, they work in the factory. They is a participant, work is a process, in the factory is a circumstance. If the nominal group has a qualifier, then the prepositional phrase becomes part of the description of something. For example, the worker in the factory were meeting yesterday. The worker in the factory is a participant, where meeting is a process, and yesterday is a circumstance. Okay, the next material, time is yours.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello, my name is Nurhalisa Widianingrum, presence number 1. I would like to explain the materials about experiential meanings and clause constituency, also nominalization. Okay, without any further ado, let's jump into the material. The first material is experiential meanings and clause constituency. So previously we have learned to analyze the clause and divide it into their constituent group. But in the clause, not all constituent group, even the prepositional phrase and adverbial groups, figure the experiential analysis, whether the clause have participant, process, and circumstances. Now look at the clause example. And actually the monster probably burped after his meal. There are two analyses here. First is constituency analysis and the other one is experiential analysis. The first is constituency analysis. So we divided the clause into its constituent group. Like the word and is conjunction group, actually is adverbial group, the monster is non-group, and so on. And the second one is experiential analysis. So we try to find participant, process, and circumstance. So the first thing we do is try to find the verbal groups in this clause. The verbal group in this clause is burp. It means bersendawa. So who's the one to burp? Yes, the monster. So the monster here is participant behavior, and after his meal is circumstance. The last material is nominalization. Nominalization is the structured chains of events and entire clauses then repackaged as participants. We can say that nominalization is the change of verb into noun or clause to nominal group. Now let's look at the following example. The first clause is the plane leaves at 9. Leaves here is process and 9 is circumstance. We can change or repackage or simplify it into nominal group like the plane's 9 departure. Those two clauses has the same meanings, but the first is process and the other is thing. Yang pertama itu menjelaskan tentang berangkat dan yang lain itu tentang keberangkatan. The second example is the same like the first one. Functional grammarians sometimes call nominalization an ideational or experiential grammatical metaphor. In bahasa we call peribahasa. Now, take a look at the following example clauses. The first example is the girl was tiny. It has possible or congruent meaning. So, in real life, the girl has small figure. And the second one is the girl was a doll. It has incongruent or metaphoric meaning. It means that the girl was not a literal doll. It explains that she was very pretty or has perfect appearance like a doll. Okay, that's it, my explanation. Hope all of you can understand. Thank you.